Hello and welcome to Any Means Necessary, the information design podcast where we explore past and present design problems by any means necessary. My name is Shadi Swedan, and today I'm joined by my fellow classmates.
Hi, I'm April.
Hi, I'm Arthur.
Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Hi, Kirk here.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Wyatt.
Today, we will be discussing all problems, experiences, and tips relating to exhibition design, and what the future of evolution of exhibition design looks like within North America and elsewhere. Before we begin, we'd like to remind everyone listening that we are in no way experts on the topics being discussed, but rather speak on our personal and collective experiences in the information design program at Mount Ruhl University and beyond. And to begin, I'll start off with passing it to Laura.
Hello, everybody. Great to see you guys again. So yeah, basically today we're going to be talking about exhibition design and sort of like what that entails within North America and beyond. So yeah, basically wayfinding, which I know everybody sort of tackled in Glenn's class, it's like only kind of a small part of exhibition design. So it's like, I guess what you would say, just a small piece. But yeah, so basically exhibition design is just using like a wide range of technologies and techniques to like help develop an experience that will resonate with audiences basically. So yeah, it's like a collaborative process and you integrate everything, wayfinding, graphic design, digital media, lighting, interior design and stuff like that, just to build an entire experience for the user. So yeah, I just sort of wanted to talk about today what you guys sort of think, like what your experiences have been in like different exhibitions or stuff like that. I don't know. Does anybody have anything to say about that?
Kirk does.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll maybe start off a topic. Maybe I'm going too far down the rabbit hole. Maybe we'll discuss this later. But I'm thinking about wayfinding. We all did that in Glenn's class, and I had an absolute blast doing it. I went with my group to Studio Bell and learned a lot about how they had two directions to go and things like that. But that's probably my only relation to this topic at this stage. I'm probably thinking later down the track here, if you want to discuss if people are going to be moving around in virtual reality spaces or, for example, I know somebody that works in, it's called Verbella or something. And basically the entire company is in this virtual, almost like a video game like space where they conduct meetings and things like that. And they host big exhibition shows and stuff like that. So I think that's coming, especially in this era of COVID, which is, interesting topic.
What do you guys think that some of the issues surrounding this topic are, like in terms of how people interact with spaces and exhibits themselves?
One of the issues that we would often face when having exhibitions and the public in general interacting with these spaces is that they do not interact with it the way we want them to. Sometimes they do the exact opposite, even though we put instructions or if we give explanations, which can be really frustrating. So I think that's one of the major issues.
So you remember that from like Kelsey, was it Kelsey's class, Arthur, where we had to make that thing with string and we had everybody interacting with it. And when we observed it, we noticed how everyone was just starting at the completely wrong point. And when we had to go in later on in the project, put in like a start button, essentially. So it's all about a matter of understanding, like from an outside perspective of like how somebody might interact with that piece, especially if it's just like something that is like fully like a tangible object that they have to participate with, right?
Were you guys all together on that assignment? I'm trying to remember because a few of you must have been paired into that ball of yarn. And I remember one of the big major factors on that particular piece was where you placed it. I think you were very fortunate to have it positioned in a high traffic area, and it enticed a lot of people to just stop and interact with it. It was really cool.
This is kind of a different barrier, but even just getting people to engage with it, whether they use it properly or not. I think getting somebody, especially in a public space, getting somebody to engage with something can be kind of difficult.
Yeah, did you guys take notes of how or what enticed people to participate with that particular piece, I guess?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we took notes on like how people actually engaged with it. And in terms of like the data that we collected for that specific scenario was a real indicator between like how like first years interacted with it compared to like fourth years and stuff. Made a huge difference in terms of like, I guess their academic development and how intelligent people were to interact with like that kind of piece too. But yeah.
So yeah, we did that whole interactive object thing. I know I did this big ball of frustration, hung invisible ink, and it was a really neat piece. We were going to enter it into research days, but then this whole pandemic thing happened. I think we were days away from actually doing a submission and stuff like that. Curious if you guys were going to do that. And I'm sorry, Laura, based on this topic, were you present for that particular class? I can't remember.
Like, do you mean were we like in school?
So the one where we created those interactive displays or whatever. So we got basically data objects back from our audience, basically. The audience being the school. We set up those booths and set up these data collection exhibits, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Like yeah, I was in that class. Yeah, but I think like when I'm thinking of that class and like sort of what we did, I think like that was sort of like that would only be a piece sort of, I guess, of the entire exhibit of what we did. But like I think something that's really interesting I was gonna bring up about exhibition design is like I think people are starting to use it more or less for like controversial subjects. Like we did ours on genetically modified children and like designing your babies like in the future. But like I definitely know a lot of groups did stuff about like gender roles and like, you know, sexism and stuff like that. So I think it's really interesting. Like it's an interesting way to drive home the message like when people walk into the exhibit, and I think it's more maybe powerful. Is that, I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah. What do you guys think about that?
I think you're totally right in saying that. I like through like my travels and stuff and exploring different museums and galleries and stuff like that, and even like was it like public and community outreach programs and events when they have a more like tangible and like engagement factor. It really drives their message home, especially if it is like a more controversial point. I remember being in, I think I was in like Berlin or something like that. And there was this museum. I can't remember the exact details, but it was Holocaust Museum. And it was like a fully submersive walk-through corridor that basically you walk through all of like the belongings of these Jews that were killed during the Holocaust. And it was like a more to like bring it home kind of feel. They had like all like their personal belongings and stuff like that. And you actually had to like walk through them, or like you look through like a pane of glass into like their living room, stuff like that. And it was like a weird perspective, and like it also showed like perspective from like Nazi soldiers and stuff like that. So like there's controversy, and it shows all the different like elements surrounding like a specific topic that really provides like a deeper sort of insight for certain events and environments, especially when you're incorporating the environmental space into it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of it. When you kind of bring in that personal factor of actually putting someone in that scenario or making them think in a sense. So yeah, walking through, I think I was actually there as well. I went to Berlin, and I think I actually walked through the same thing you walked through. So it's really interesting, right? It really puts you in a perspective because you get to actually tangibly see everything in front of you, and you get to like, it's kind of like a personal connection. It makes you think about it, right? These belongings belong to the people that died in those concentration camps. And in the same way, in exhibition, it kind of poses the same idea when you have a question, a very bold question, you know. So going back to our assignment, and when we were putting up all those exhibitions, a lot of people focused on having a big question that was bold letters, big, that kind of, in the same sense, made people have perspective and think about something. So if it was on designing a baby, for example, if you were like, how would you like to design your baby, right? It makes people sit down and makes them think while they're passing by. They're like, wow, like I really wonder what would I want, right? And then, but then it like there's a moral question with that too, right? So it brings in your perspectives as well. So I think that's a big part of exhibition design.
Yeah, I think that was, you know, the sign is definitely an enticement for sure. Like I know we put in big bold letters, illuminate your stress, and people would look at the word stress. It was probably quite prominent, right? And basically, yeah, that's really what attracted people in. And then the exhibit was, well, we wanted to make sure that the exhibit had this sort of pseudo art piece kind of vibe to it. So, people were interested in how it looked in general.
I also think a big part of it was, having like an absolute figure, so such as the question, right? And having that straight up. So like, for example, one thing that, I adored our exhibition. I thought it was really well done. But one thing that I could take away from it was that we kind of gave, as an exhibition, too many tasks and too many things to think about, too many different points of discussion. And so like people would come up and, as Wyatt was saying, people didn't know where to start, right? And so when you give too many things to think about overall, as opposed to having just one overarching question and a kind of beginning and end, where would you like to end up? People will think about those nodes anyways. People will think about the different things anyways. But to have a good exhibition design is maybe kind of a linear thing to kind of think about.
Are there any other barriers that we can kind of talk about at this point?
I think the biggest thing is like really driving home and solidifying like the planning stages of everything, in terms of like how you actually design, who you're designing it for, and really honing in on like the persona of like your audience that you're after, because the audience is the main focus, right? So the biggest barrier is understanding who you're talking to and what you're trying to either convince them of or like change their mind about, anything like that. Really understanding, honing in on what that means to them, essentially.
So just wondering what you get, everyone's opinion is do you think one way to approach this problem is to look at exhibition design like an essay, like how you tackle an essay, in the sense that the introduction of a thesis should clearly state what is it about, and the best essays are usually focused on a very narrow and specific niche, but it's a good elaboration of that. So would you say you can take how you write an essay or a thesis and you put it into to solve this problem of like, how are people going to interact, or how are people going to use, or whether people are going to use the exhibition properly? Do you think that's one way to approach it?
I'll start on that. I know as an information designer myself, I've been studying. I'm more focused on the design and things like that. I'm awful at writing essays, so that sounds like a scary way to attack things to me personally.
Something that I discussed in Melena's class and she taught us was like to focus on the 5 E's of experience. So like you'd start with entice, like how are you going to get people to know about it? Enter, how are people going to approach it? Engage, how people are actually going to use the exhibit and engage with it. The exit, and then the extend, like what are they going to really get from it? What are they going to take home? And then there's an acronym for it. I think it's poems. Does anybody else remember? It's like people, objects, environments, messages, and services. So like those are all things that you would consider when you're like making an exhibit and like the whole environment. It's interesting to approach it that way.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I think one of my natural, tendency would be to just focus on that persona. We spend so much time focusing on personas in information design. I think that's where I'd start. And again, I think that's what I was thinking. Again, going back to our exhibit, people that are passerbys, busy students walking through. So we kind of had all those notes jotted down on one of those charts. You remember those charts? I can't remember exactly what it was called, but you kind of sit there and you do the ethnographic observation technique, I suppose, and you kind of fill in the blanks, and you just sit there for half an hour and observe everybody kind of interacting with the piece so that you can make improvements, I guess. But to start things off, again, we always consider that person, that persona.
I think it is really important to have sort of like a planned out idea of how you want people to interact with the exhibit. But I also think that where we sort of differentiate, like as opposed to Europe, is that like I feel like I guess this is what they taught us too. In North America, we use, I guess, exhibits more as like a place for like community building, and like we drive home like a message, like we want the users to react to that. But I think in Europe, it's more of like a subjective experience. Like they know that some people aren't going to take away the same things, but like it's kind of the silver lining of it all. You know what I mean? Like everybody takes away a specific thing or whatever, and I think that's really important to sort of keep in mind too.
I think what I see like a lot in terms of like social media and what I've been exposed to with like public outreach and causal exhibitions in Europe, they're like you say, very subjective, and they're very like well, not individualistic, but like they appeal to like a very specific audience, and whether or not it can be put on to like one person, or they're usually something out in public and busy streets that is like extremely either like graphic or like attention grabbing. Like it's something just like with poems and that acronym to describe how you actually engage with people. It's always like the most obscene process to actually get people engaged with it. And then they always, like, I'm always seeing them from Europe. They're always going viral and stuff like that. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely like super important, because like I think the more obscene or the more sort of controversial, like the more memorable it's gonna be for people, right? So like they're never gonna forget like if they walk into an exhibit and it's all like, I don't know, naked bodies or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of the more risque, the more impactful.
Yeah, I saw this one that this is what I was thinking of. It was this like I don't know, she's this like German model or something like that. And she literally like walked around the streets just like either completely naked or like she put a box around. She did one where she put a box around her chest, and then she did a different one where she put a box around her waist, and like obviously she wasn't wearing anything, and it was like a weirdly subdued approach to like sexism and like sexual assault and everything like that. It was a very obscure way to go about it, but it raised a lot of awareness. And that's just what I'm thinking of with like that's a form of exhibition, right?
Yeah, speaking of, I guess some Europeans that I met in my travels overseas, I went over there for reasons for like anthropology and things like that. It was neat how anthropologists were kind of tied to designers and the people-centric approach in their studies and things like that. And I met this one lady. She was working on this one project. It was called well, it was called the Give a Shit initiative, right? And what it was focused on was excuse me, sanitation in third world countries, and that being a problem with waste management and things like that, right? So she did exactly that. It seems to be maybe a thing in Europe where, yeah, she did sort of like a public form of art, I guess, where she and some people that were, of course, associated to the project, they basically sat in this big center, it was a big heavy traffic center, and they basically sat with their pants pulled down on toilets. Again, for that awareness effect, which was really interesting. And again, I'm sure a lot of people ask questions about it.
Yeah, sometimes it can be like a more literal sense of a cause, right? Like sounds like they're just enacting like how you give a shit.
So with that, I'm just curious, what do you think North America, since we're all located here in specific, could probably learn from Europe or other areas to kind of like improve our exhibition design? Or maybe what can we kind of like inherit, adapt, or whatsoever? Like maybe less censorship, less worrying about would everybody be happy? Would there be any outrage? And just kind of like the main point of the exhibition is the message, or what do you guys think?
I would think, the best outcome would be, especially when we're speaking of awareness, is supplanting that image in your audience's mind, so that they actually do care about whatever you were talking about, having them engage with the topic and, walk away with some newfound knowledge.
I also think as students going to play, I guess it's hard right now with COVID, but actually going and interacting with exhibits, like I think Telespark has some pretty amazing exhibits that you can walk through and like experiencing those and like what other people are doing really helps too.
I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Sorry.
You can go.
It was just a fun thing to take away from the other causal exhibits. But you guys heard about that like Van Gogh exhibit that's going to be coming to Calgary? It's like an interactive walkthrough you can go through, and it's like projected all on the walls and the floor and ceiling or something like that.
I heard about it. When does it start?
I think it's like later on after. I think it might be in the summertime or something. But I think I might try and get tickets and go to that.
Yeah,
Like
do
go
they
with my
have
sister.
do they have like some kind of COVID setup, preemptive kind of?
Yeah, I think it's just it's like going through a store or supermarket. You just walk through it and you keep your distance and stuff. Most likely you have to wear your mask in that, but it's just a big open uh, room that they've set this or will be setting this thing up. And it sounds like a kind of cool way to. I've been to like Van Gogh Museum in Paris. It's actually a pretty cool way to see that art.
So do you guys think there's a difference in approach and outcome? So let's so far we've stated almost two different exhibitions. So we have something where it makes you want to think something. It makes you really think about it personally, right? But then we have something like, for example, you brought up Telespark, Caitlin, I think, and Telespark, for example, had Bodyworks. I don't know if you guys have ever been to Bodyworks before, but it's interesting. It's really cool. It doesn't make me think personally on a certain level. Maybe it does for other people. Or there's the Van Gogh exhibit that you were talking about. Is there a different approach towards making something look cool and just surrounding yourself in something that's interesting? I think even at MRU, we have the interior designers often make exhibits that you just walk through. And it's supposed to make you kind of feel a certain way, but not necessarily think on a personal level. So is there a difference in approach there that you guys can identify at all, or no?
I don't think that there is a difference, because even if you create something or design something and you want a user to experience it a certain way, there's no guarantee that that person is going to experience it how you expect them to anyways. So, I mean, I design for engagement and then hope for the best, hope that it's a good experience, whether it's, either way you want to look at it, I guess.
Well, I mean, right there, right? So, I mean, in my eyes there, you can design for engagement, right? And a lot of people, you want to engage. But let's say, for example, at MRU, what is that? Is that the, we often see at the front at the West Gate, is it abortion signs that they're holding up and anti-abortion signs? So I think as opposed to engagement for something like that, it's not necessarily an exhibit, but maybe it's more, they're not searching for engagement. Maybe they're searching for an outcome. You know what I mean? So maybe this depends on the designer themselves more so than the people walking through it. I want you to kind of leave this and what I've shown you with a certain outcome so that you can think a certain way, versus I want you to engage and kind of see what you feel when you walk through this or something,
Totally. And I think I used the wrong word there, not designing for engagement, but for experience.
I think that like for the different platforms and different types of exhibits, like obviously it conveys different desired outcomes, and that whether it's through the wayfinding process or provocation and like experience design, or as opposed to like so wayfinding, spatial design, environmental design, those will all have like a very similar desired outcome in that, as opposed to something that you're just trying to provoke through an audience as well, I think. But it all comes down back to the initial proposal and persona of your audience. And obviously there's a huge interpretation factor to how people actually would interact with it. But I think that it comes down to like kind of the two main categories of like environmental spatial design or provocation design, experience design, personal opinion.
Well, yeah, I think in the grand scheme of things, I learned a lot of the different sort of techniques and benefits of using exhibition design as opposed to maybe more traditional means of marketing or trying to convey a message. And yeah, I hope we all took something sort of interesting away from this talk, and we can all, experience some cool exhibits once COVID's over.
Yeah, and with that, it looks like we're out of time for today. But thank you all for participating, and thank you all at home for tuning in today. We hope you've enjoyed and learned about how to become the best designer you can be. We encourage you to join us next week and apply these topics in your profession, of course, by any means necessary. Thank you.